Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to the second in our IPR talk series. I can see from the attendance that there are quite a few people that were at the last one. Thank you for joining us again. I've been told I have 2 minutes, so I don't want to talk too much. As you're all aware, today's topic is basically on publishing. The topic, we gave it a nice twist, music publishing, sound recording, a paradigm shift for Afrobeats, which is what today is about for Nigeria. Afrobeats is what we're all about right now. With me, I have two of my partners, Professor Arowolo and Professor Adewopo, who is generally going to be the moderator and who's probably going to kick me off soon. And Professor Arowolo will join them on the panel. We have 5 panelists, and I think I should pass it all on to not Prof Y, but Prof A, to take it from here. Professor Adewopo is the principal partner at LNE Legal Consultants. He's a professor of intellectual property and is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Senior advocates basically based on intellectual property. So I guess we have a Don here tonight or today, this afternoon. Prof, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Laoye. I will go straight to the program. The subject of today's webinar is music publishing. Music publishing is not only one of the most topical issues of the music industry in Nigeria today, but it is also a huge missing part in the debate on the structure of the Nigerian music industry. With the exponential rise of Nigerian music industry in recent times, music publishing has been generally regarded by experts as one of the most valued creative assets and source of wealth. While it has more economic significance than it has been accorded, recent realities are increasingly showing a gradual paradigm shift towards the emergence of music publishing as a viable sector in the music industry in Nigeria. By some accounts, of the global recorded music revenue at over 19 billion US dollars in 2018, music publishing revenue accounts for 5.5 billion US dollars, over 38% coming from the US market alone. In Nigeria, a report covering 5-year period between 2015 and 2020, published in 2019 by the Nigerian Recorded Music Industry Report, puts an estimated value of Nigerian recorded music business at about 50 million US dollars with projected growth based on domestic revenue alone. The question is, where is music publishing in this figure? With apparently weak or non-existent music publishing sector in Nigeria, questions have arisen about the fortunes of composers, songwriters, and publishers in whose repertoire the wealth of Nigerian music has been and continues to be generated, especially with the boom in digital music distribution channels. Today, this webinar organized by LNE Legal Consultant recognizes the importance of music publishing, and we have a panel of speakers that will explore a whole lot of questions and issues, particularly with the growing realization of the creative and economic value of this sector and how it can be activated and used for the overall development of the Nigerian music industry. 4 key themes will come out very clearly in this webinar regarding music publishing: the law, the business, the owners, and the money. We're going to be asking the questions: what is the law? How does the business function? Who are the owners? Where is the money? We have a rich blend of panel who are experts in this field in their own right. And the profile I have here is of each of them is so huge that this webinar will not allow me to read. We have it on the site, on the website. So I will just briefly speak to each of them before the question starts. I will start with Mr. Colin Gale. He's a producer, artist manager, and media executive par excellence. He was born in London to Jamaican parents and graduated from the Stockton State University in New Jersey in the US. Gale's rich profile is packed with roles too numerous to reel out at this point. But let me just say that his furrow into Africa since 2004 has left him decades of experience across music, media, television, film, focused on the intersection of African culture and global best practices. Currently, he's the founder and chief executive officer of Africa Creative Agency, a full service package providing content and content platforms to live events rooted in the visionary branding platform that promotes the continent's cultural profile through strategy and global best practices. Mr. Gale is welcome. We have another guru in this field, Mr. Akinyemi Ayinola, a lawyer, consultant, partner, and co-founder of the High Tower Solicitors and Advocates. He specializes in entertainment law and practice. Akinyemi's primary focus is on music industry, where he represents both platinum and upcoming artists, producers, songwriters, managers, record labels, and production companies. He himself is a songwriter and composer. He's well-known blogger, speaker, contributor to many debates in the music industry in Nigeria. We have a top academic in this field who's a specialist, Dr. Ifeoma Oluwashimilore. He's an intellectual property specialist with focus on copyright and related rights, e-commerce, and law of banking and negotiable instruments. She holds a PhD in intellectual property law from Obafemi Awolowo University. He teaches intellectual property law at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. We have our own irrepressible Emmanuel Bez Idakula, known shortly as Bez, Nigerian artist, multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, composer, vocalist, lyricist, creator, and mentor. Bez creative genius defies boundaries. It draws inspiration from various genres, African beats, hip hop, soul, and jazz, unified to enrich its music and proudly giving life to a new genre, an alternative soul. Ben's music career has recorded impressive achievements that I cannot even begin to mention. Let me just mention one. Very recently, he's one of the 11 artists globally selected in 2018 for Medium's Artist Accelerator, which is world's leading music event for creators. He owns 2 recording labels, Bez Idakula Global and Supersong. Last but not the least, our very dear own Ayoyemi Lawa Aurolo, who is a professor at the School of Law and Security Studies of Babcock University. She has lived and studied across 3 continents. She holds a PhD of Kent University of Canterbury, United Kingdom, and she's a specialist in the field of intellectual property law with focus on knowledge systems in developing and African countries. She's a partner in L&A legal consultant, and of course, a panelist here. Ladies and gentlemen, having introduced all our panelists, I will go straight to the questions to set the tone for the discussion. As often as the practice here, we don't have a topic for each panelist. So we start the debate with questions, so that those questions will raise the issues that our participants and attendees can draw questions from. I will start with the foundation. We want to know what is music publishing for our viewers, for our participants who are not familiar, even for those who are familiar. we still want to know what is music publishing. And there's no less person here to dive into this uncharted terrain, at least in Nigeria, than Colin. Colin, the first question is to you. What is music publishing all about? How does it function? Who are the beneficiaries? Who are the right owners? Tell us about that. You're muted?
Yeah, sorry, guys. It is an honor to be here among these giants. It's impressive. I think I said it on our pre-production call. It's just an honor. I am literally blown away at many levels. I try to answer this question in a very non-legal way and in just a very basic way, right? I come from a family of publishers. My sister is a publisher. I became a publisher at the age of 25 years old. I became a publisher myself. To kind of unpack it for you, publishing is basically your copyright. You're a writer. When you write something as a musician, and I define that for you, writing could both be melody and lyrics. So it could be the music, which could be considered writing, the melody, which could be considered writing, and obviously the lyrics, right? An original definition of writing was really just melody and words. If you want to define a song, it's really melody and words. Hip hop somewhat changed that to where we started to look at music a little bit differently. We started to give music a lot more publishing share than it used to. But generally, when it started, it was just really the melody and the words, and the musician was following those melodies. As a publisher, we are responsible for collecting income around the world from your copyrights, from your works. So i.e. when radio plays a song, radio pays a particular fee to a performing rights organization, and that particular fee is then divided among its writers depending on the airplay. So depending on how much airplay you get on a radio station will then dictate the kind of fees that you will get. And normally you have a publisher that will split that with you as a writer. Right? You also get paid from TV, very similar mechanism. TVs pay a blank license for music, and then that money is also divided via the performing rights organizations. Then you get into a movie space, which is a little bit different when we start talking about sync, right? So when you place your music into a movie, sometimes within a TV show, you get a sync fee for that particular music. And that's pretty much, and this can apply to video games. It can apply across the board. And I'm only talking about music, so I won't talk about literal publishing. I'll stick just to music in this context. As a publisher, we represent about 16 writers across the continent of Africa. Those writers are based primarily in East, West, and Southern Africa. Those writers have participated at many levels. The biggest example I could probably share with you guys is recently Netflix, as you guys know, has now put boots on the ground in Africa. We are fortunate as a company to have represented the first 2 shows that were released by Netflix. So we did the music supervision for both Queen Sono, and we did the music supervision for both Blood and Water. What that means for music supervision from a publishing perspective is that all the music you hear in both of those series are produced by our writers. So our writers not only get their publishing money, they get sync money, right? And so that's a huge financial upswing for writers on the continent, is placing your music into TV shows, into commercial, into movies, so on and so on and so on. The biggest problem that we have on the continent is the PROs and their inability to either collect or their inability to distribute what they collect. That has been across the board. I would imagine the most robust system I've seen so far is the South African system, but there's still a lot of holes within that system. The administrative fees are quite high, but a lot of things are changing in our industry because of streaming, to where we depended so much on radio, revenue from radio. With streaming, where most of the artists are making a bulk of their revenue, you now have global organizations that collect globally. So you no longer need to deal with that from a local perspective. You have guys like Mint that will collect, because there are only about 10 or 15 DSPs in the world, and they collect globally and then distribute out with a fee of only, I believe, something like 4% that they actually charge. So there's a lot of new development in the publishing space that allows the writers to make income across the board. But our biggest issue is a localization, where writers and funds are not being distributed to the writers, and we don't have enough data capture to know actually what is going on and what writers should be paid.
Wow, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
For another 2, 3, 4 minutes, the next question is, from that brief description of music publishing by Colin, we want to go to the fundamental question of what is the law on music publishing? Does it have a legal? This question will go to Dr. Ifeoma Oluwashemilore. What is the law on music publishing? Is it recognized and protected by copyright law as a creative work, at least under the Nigerian copyright system? You have 3, 4 minutes maximum.
Yeah. Good afternoon once again. My name is Ifeoma Oluwashemilore, and I want to speak on the law that will guide us in music publishing. We know that the world thrives on ideas and works of creative individuals. The role of the law is to create an enabling environment for the industry to strive and to build. And the primary legislation to guide us in music publishing will be the copyright law. And copyright law is provided in the Nigerian Constitution under Cap C 28, Laws of Federation of Nigeria 2004. Now, the legal regime for music publishing will be subsumed in copyright protection in Nigeria, which is governed under our Copyright Acts. And the Copyright Act provides in Section 1 that the literary, musical, and artistic works are works eligible for protection under the Copyright Act. And of course, so that means the music industry or the music publishing will come under the Copyright Act in Nigeria. Now, we're going to look at, under the copyright law, a songwriter will own 100% of his or her song and all the related rights that is concerned in the music that he has produced. However, until that songwriter signs his rights to a publisher, 100% of his 100% rights will be with the songwriter. So what that means is that when a songwriter, an artist produces a song, he owns 100% copyright of his work. And until he then gets a publisher to handle his artistic work or whatever, as the case, maybe when he has an agreement or a contract with a publisher, then we now look at how they share the copyright in the song. Now, under a law, the right to make and sell copies will reside in Section 6 of the Copyright Act. It gave us all the rights that anyone, an artist or the music publisher will own in his copyright work. And those rights are rights to copy, rights to distribute, rights to reproduce, and all of that. So until the artist or the songwriter decides to get a publisher, he has 100% of those rights in Section 6 of the Copyright Act, which is to produce, to distribute, to copy, to adapt, and things like that. So with rights to the recorded music, there are two copyrights. Copyright in the musical composition, owned by the songwriter, and copyright in the sound of the recording, owned by the recorded artist if he decides to be his own publisher, or he gets a publisher to produce his music. So this, am I making myself clear? So what that means is that he owns, there's copyright in the musical composition, which is owned by the songwriter himself. And then there's copyright in the sound recording, which will then be owned by the music publisher. However, if the songwriter decides to be his own publisher, to be everything, he has 100% copyright in his work. Now, so we're looking at who owns copyright. As a songwriter, you own the copyright in your work. The moment it is written and fixed, of course, there are provisions that in Nigeria, you don't have to register your copyright. The moment an idea is fixed in a medium that is reproducible, in a medium that can be communicated, it automatically enjoys copyright protection. So once the songwriter is not singing the song on his head, he has fixed it in any way, maybe in a CD, or he has recorded in any form, it automatically enjoys copyright protection. So it is only when he decides to transfer that rights to a publisher, then we now start to look at what is the percentage, and all of that will have to be contained in the agreements that is going to have with the publisher. So who owns what, at what is the percentage, and things like that. So should I go on?
No, please. We have a lot of time to explore. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, sir. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doctor. I mean, from that brief description of the law, we have the rights now. We have the cornerstone rights, as Dr. Ifeoma has told us, the production right, which is the mechanical right. We have the publishing right, which is what we're talking about. We have the performing right. Those key rights provided under Section 6. Thank you so much for that. Now, the third question, we are progressing. We are making a systematic progress in unpacking this huge sector in the music industry. The next question would be the business, and Akinyemi will help us unpack that. And the question is there, we have seen the foundation laid by Colin, by defining this huge industry or sector, as the case may be. We have heard about the law. What is the law? We know that it's now recognized and protected under Copyright Act. The question now is there a place for music publishing in the current structure of the Nigerian music industry? Akinyemi, that's for you.
Thank you very much, Professor Adewopo. Thanks again for the invitation. Thanks for the opportunity. And good afternoon to my co-panelists. Like the speakers before me have mentioned, particularly Mr. Colin, the business of music publishing is the business of songwriting and how compositions are exploited commercially. As it stands in 2020, in my lifetime, I've never seen Nigerian music so globally recognized and appreciated. You go to bed and you wake up the next day and you find out that some of Nigeria's most colorful musicians are collaborating globally to create chart-topping music. And that's us to what are the implications for ownership? What are the implications for wealth creation? And then we have to answer the questions of what the law says. The professor before me has also explained it. There's a legal basis for that. So in Nigeria now, all the original compositions that are being created by Nigerian songwriters, there has to be a mechanism for ensuring that all the songs and then the sound recording that is created, the two important copyrights, there has to be the guarantee that the commercial exploitation of those would lead to a transfer of compensation. And for Nigerian songwriters to do that, they have to be in proper relationships. They have to be in proper relationships with the likes of Mr. Colin, because they are equipped with the relationships and the resources to ensure that they go after all the royalties that are generated from all the platforms where music is being exploited. So with Mr. Colin, as a publisher, he's able to track the music with the different types of codes that are embedded in the song. They are empowered with the authorization, with the contract to sign with music publishers. They'll go over to all these distribution platforms. Also, they'll be able to register the compositions with the different collecting societies or right management companies globally. We would also ensure that with every stream, with every sale, with every mechanical use, it will translate to thousands and thousands of dollars for the songwriters. And whenever music publishers are in relationship with songwriters, either as a full service music publishing company or as an administrator, they do this on the basis of earning a share of the royalties for themselves. So if you're in a full music publishing situation, usually you get to share royalties, maybe 50-50, or if you have leverage, you can vary that. But again, there are relationships where you can go in with music publishers where they can just minister your music catalog, and then they get a percentage, maybe 15 to 20%. Myself, in the last couple of years, because of how the music business has evolved so much through the help of technology, Nigerian songwriters now have the benefits. Even from sitting in the corner of their homes, they're able to self-administer their music catalogs. So yes, in as much as our Nigerian artists are creating original content, and then the music is being commercially exploited across TV, radio, Google, Spotify, Amazon Music, and many other platforms, across clubs in the UK, restaurants, bars, and many other platforms where music is being publicly consumed. For every consumption, there is a dollar tied to same. I don't want to go into the problem we are facing in Nigeria with our collective societies, but I bear witness to the fact that music publishing is already a thing for many songwriters. We're advocating that they also pay more attention to that, because from just working once and setting up the right infrastructure, you are able to track the payment. And some see it as passive income without doing any extra work for something you've already done, even as far back as 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. You're able to still earn income on a month-by-month basis or on a quarterly basis. So that is something. Then again, in closing, your relationship with music publishers would be the underlining factor as to how you would be successfully able to collect some of these royalties. So if you don't have a music publisher, or you are not self-publishing yourself, then you are leaving money on the table and maybe losing some passive income that can be generated. So I think what we need to do as lawyers, which I've also dedicated myself to doing since 2018, I've been championing, a lot of our songwriters and record producers looking in the direction of music publishing, paying attention to helping to properly set up their music catalog, getting into contracts so that everything is well defined, because music is highly collaborative. There's hardly the case that one person is able to create music solely by themselves. And as you create with other people, it's like building real estate. You want to be sure that everybody knows what is due to them. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for that. Thank you. We have quite a number of questions already coming in, so we need to go. Quickly go around this first round. I already have a question for Dr. Ifoma. I already have a question for Colin. But Akinyemi has really raised a lot of issues, which we're going to come back into. Issues of PRO, issues of accounting, and all of that. But Bez, you have a special place in this panel. And I think this question is very important.
Okay.
There has been an exponential rise in the Nigerian music in the last at least 30 years. Akinyemi alluded to that, particularly with the emergence of new music and Afrobeats, which you play, in terms of talents, in terms of sophistication, in terms of expanding streams of income, potential streams of income. What has been responsible for the absence of music industry in Nigeria over the years? I mean, from your experience as a composer, as a practitioner in this field, we don't hear a lot about music publishing. What is your position in this regard?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, thank you very much, Prof, for having me here and for this question. I think from my experience, a lot of people are not fully, or properly educated by the time they're getting into the music industry. You need to understand that a lot of people are doing this as, passion, their love for it, and they find themselves in a certain space or scene. And when opportunity jumps at them, when opportunity comes, they jump on the opportunity. And it's a day-by-day thing. And eventually, they're making a lot of waves from creating music, and they're happy to be there. They're happy to have the crowds at the events. They're happy to be popular. They're happy to be making some money. So not a lot of people have really, really studied the music industry, the music business, and knowing the ins and outs of everything that they need to know and where you can be leaving money on the table. So I think that's the number one thing, education. A lot of people are not educated about the music business. The second thing is, which goes with the education as well, know-how. A lot of people don't really know what is going on. A lot of people don't know about music publishing, so that is the second thing. I think the environment is a major, major factor. Now, if you're in an environment where there's proper structure, an environment where they are used to paying publishing fees or used to collecting publishing fees, then it's a no-brainer for you to automatically know that you're meant to collect publishing. You're meant to set up your rights properly, your copyrights, and you're meant to collect. But if the environment doesn't, encourage that, you wouldn't really know. So, for example, I know there was a time where Kosono was really fighting with the radio stations, about paying rights and all of that, and the radio stations stopped playing, the artists that had registered with the Collection Society of Koson. So already you could see that the environment was a problem, because if radio stations are not willing to pay, or if TV stations are not willing to pay, how then are you able to make an industry from publishing? So it's not just the artists, it's not just the law, it's also about making sure that, yes, if the law is there, how do you make sure that people abide to the law? How do you make sure that people are able to pay these licensing fees? There's so many hotels, so many clubs, so many people that play music, but how many of those people actually pay a licensing fee, for publishing to be collected? Now, and when we're talking about music, a lot of time in Nigeria, we're thinking about Lagos. So, of course, there's Ogun State, there's Nasarawa, there's Kano, there's Sokoto, there are all these other states. How many people are actually, educated enough to be paying those fees? Who are the people that are monitoring that these fees are being paid? So just just because of the environment, you find out that most artists, just move on with what they have and face where the bulk of their money is coming from, which is performances. A lot of artists make a lot of more money from performances than anything else. Now, of course, with the advent of sales of your music online, I can literally just go online, look for a DSP, and put up my music, and my music is being sold. So more people are beginning to find out the power that they have, and they know where the money is. The money is being left on the table, and these days it's right there up in their consciousness. So more people are learning about it, but these are the problems.
Thank you, Bez. Prof, you always have a way of tying all of this together for us. We've had so much on the table now. We have the definition, the description, the business, the law, and Bez mentioned quite a number of things: the system, the structure, the environment, awareness, education. Is there something more you can help us to tie together in terms of the legal foundation, because music publishing, as we heard, is based on the legal foundation. Is there something more in terms of the relationship between the law, the business, and the existing structure? Can you help us tie this together? Because we have a whole lot of questions that I have to I already have a question for Akinyemi as well. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Prof. Good afternoon, everyone. Like you said, it's good answering the last question. I'll start with saying I believe you have song sharks swimming on land, not in water or online, on land, because you said at the beginning there's a gap, not just a gap, a huge gap for music publishing. And I think Akinyemi said that there's no structure. So there's a gap, there's no structure. But then you have people who are out there who are living on these songwriters. And there are people that do not make profits from royalties, but they make their profits from charging people who are not aware of the rights they have over their creations, in this case, music. So they're just swimming everywhere. And then they'll tell you, I can let you blow. Give me that music. You'll blow overnight. And what they're trying to do is just make money off these people without authorization. Dr. Shemilori also talked about the law. Now the law, when you look at songwriters, or a song, each song written benefits in two forms, from composition and sound recording. Now, a songwriter will benefit from the composition as well as the sound recording, while a sound recorder will only benefit from the sound recording. He only has rights there. So a songwriter has so many rights across boards. A composer of music is entitled to mechanical royalties, performance royalties, license for synchronization, license for sampling, print rights for music sheets. I don't know if a lot of people know about music sheets, but you have that. That is how it all started when you talk about music publishing. Now, music publishers are not just about royalties. They're about a whole lot of things as well. They review the music, they audition, they do so many things. And those services are missing right now in the Nigerian terrain. So there's so much to be done, so much to be made. Mr. Collin talked about what they do and stuff like that, and what music publishing is all about. But there's this gap. Now, looking at the Act, the Copyright Act, Section 6, general nature of copyright. So you have it there, reproduction. Then you have publish, then just publish. Okay, the writer has the right to publish. What about the music publisher? The in-between between the music and the sound recording and every other thing that is out there. It's not just about royalties, it's about so much more. And then you now have the nature of copyright in sound recording. So you have the law talking about sound recording, you have the law talking about the songwriters, the composers, talking about publishing regarding their exclusive rights. And then you also have stuff about limitations regarding collection of royalties and all that in Section 17. You also have Section 39 looking at collecting societies. Music publishing is missing somewhere because they have their limitations as well. Otherwise, they'll become song sharks. In the long run, if there's nothing in the law specifically talking about their roles and what they do with composers or songwriters or those people who are in the music industry that do a whole lot of writing when it comes to music. I'm thinking of writing some music as well now, so I need some music publishing companies to get in touch with me.
All right. Collin, the first question from our attendees to you, and the question here is, you go to the mechanics. It touches on the mechanics of music publishing, which I think your experience in this field will help us explore. The question is, how are these publishing fees determined? Is there a general rule, or the PROs determine them according to locality, or according to consumption, or the territory? That's the question.
Yes, I'll try to answer it in a couple of ways. There is a formula that ASCAP and the BMIs and all those guys use to figure out the collection based on the radio station size, the size of the population that it's talking to, how much music they play, and then there's some magical formula these guys developed over time that they come up with that basically then dictates the amount that a radio station will pay, right? The biggest problem, I think the biggest problem that we're faced with, if I'm trying to answer the question correctly, as a publisher, you can either be an admin, you can either do an admin deal, which can go anywhere from 5. I see admin deals on the continent way more aggressive than I see in North America. Normally in North America, an admin deal, which is basically means I am only going to collect on your behalf. I do not own anything. I do not own your copyright. I am simply a collection agency to look around the world and collect where your monies might be, right? So those deals normally in America, anywhere from 5% to 20%. The continent seems to have somewhere between 15 to 20% on average, right? Then you move into a co-publishing deal, which means that I now own this copyright with you, right? We own it together and I exploit it, and I either own it in perpetuity or I own it over 15, 20 years and there's a reversion clause, right? When the music business in the 90s really ran into the digital landscape and it was at jeopardy of really falling apart, what kept the wheels on was the publishing business. The publishing business is what you give to your kids. It is your retirement plan. It is your 401. It is everything. I would not build a company today in today's world without a publishing business. It wouldn't make any sense for me to do that. Publishing for me is the bedrock, it's the legacy, right? Because we weren't, as people of color, necessarily in North America owning the labels. So the labels were owned by conglomerates, massive corporations. They owned the masters, right? So way we made our money was in our publishing. And a lot of guys in the 60s and 70s in America didn't get their publishing because of a lot of American issues. So we'll leave it at that for now, but didn't get their publishing. Today, publishing is probably one of the most, I would say it's probably the biggest asset next to masters in the business. So to answer your question, you have many types of deals. I tend to stick more to co-publishing deals, but it also depends on the artist's catalog, how big it is, right? And how much work is needed. I'll always tend to tell clients that if we're going to build this house together and my responsibility is to exploit your content out to the world and find different ways for that content to make you revenue, then that is something that we should co-own. Once our contract is over, you can move on and start again. What we created together, we will own together for a period of time or in perpetuity. It just kind of depends on each deal. I'm not sure if I answered all the questions, but that's basically the landscape for publishing.
Yes, I think.
Can I just add one more thing, Professor? Can I add one more thing? The biggest problem that we have, the biggest problem we have now in Nigeria is that all of this publishing revenue is not coming back into the country, and that's really that's if for government who writes these laws to understand that there's a huge tax base that is not being taxed. Because if I'm a Nigerian writer, it's unlikely I'm going to register with the local organization. It's more than likely I'm going to register with PRS in London or ASCAP in America or BMI or CSAC. There is no, and I've had this exact conversation we have, and I had in 2006, and I can't remember the young man's name in Nigeria, and in London. We met at Paddington Station and had a 5-hour, I think he was the head of COSAN at the time, I believe. Obi Asika had introduced me. And we started very preliminary conversations about the industry. Right now, from a tax base, from a revenue perspective, Nigeria is losing. That revenue is not coming home. It may come home to that individual writer. That individual writer, like a Burna Boy, is not signed to anything that has anything to do with Nigeria. He's signed to Universal Publishing in the UK. He's a part of PRS in the UK. And the long list of all the rest is the same. It's the same across the board. And so from a financial perspective, as much as Africa and Nigeria in whole are celebrating what is going on, the country or the industry is not benefiting from it. The countries abroad are actually benefiting from that revenue flow. We're not benefiting from it at all, not a dollar, not a cent. And when we do build these organizations, our administration fees are so ridiculously high that it does not make any sense as a writer to even join. You have agencies, and I'll leave them nameless on the continent, that charge up to 38% admin fees. And the average in America is 8 to 12%, if not less. So it's I couldn't understand why you would charge, or you would have a staff of 200 people to collect and take 30. It just doesn't, not in today's electronic environment, it doesn't take that. So I think that we have a long way to go. I think for the next 5 years, I can only imagine that most of the writers will flee to the global organizations. So we either need to do best global practices and do partnerships with these organizations to figure out what we do locally. Because I don't think it's that radio stations don't want to pay. I think they're very fine with paying. They're just, who are they paying, and whether that money is actually going to go to who it should go to.
Actually,
and
Colin,
I think that's where I see it.
Actually, Colin, there's a whole lot of vision around publishing royalties, and we're going to explore this. Akinyemi is there, Base is there. So just hold on that. You've raised so many views on publishing royalties that we're going to explore. Dr. Ifoma, there's a question here for you. Let me just quickly ask the question. Dr. Ifoma mentioned that copyright need not be registered to be enjoyed. Can an unregistered copyright owner enforce his rights in a court of law? Just a minute to dispose with that question. We have a whole lot of questions. Yes. Dr. Ifoma, did you get the question?
Yes, sir. My answer to that is that, thank you very much, sir. I'm happy to be back again. So my answer to that is that it is very, very possible for what is important is that the law provides that you don't have to register to enjoy copyright protection. So once your idea is fixed in a medium that can be perceived, it automatically enjoys copyright protection. However, I was going to mention other subsidiary legislations that will back up music publishing in Nigeria. I didn't have more time that I could have talked about that. There are other subsidiary legislations. And then the Nigerian Copyright Commission is also responsible for protecting musical and artistic works in Nigeria. So, and then there is a provision at the Nigerian Copyright Commission, which is called the notification scheme. So if an artist produces a music, it's possible to, it is not registration per se, to take it to the NCC to get them notified. It's not registration. But that can actually help the songwriter when there is an infringement or something. And then we're looking at key pure temporary, pure jury, that is, who is first in time is better in law. So you can then go to the NCC to see that, you notified the NCC in 2019, December, and this other person is coming out with the same songwriter in January 2020. So that can help you to prove your case, but it is very possible that without registration, you can enforce infringement if your copyright is infringed upon.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for that. Akinyemi, are you there? Akinyemi?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay. You are an artist, you are a lawyer, you are an entrepreneur in the music industry. This question is from your colleague, actually, in the industry. And he said, who has the publishing rights of music that is sampled or a remake of the original?
Yes, thank you for that question, Prof. Usually with sampling, it's a very, very complex situation because oftentimes you're creating something original in itself, but again, maybe you are referencing or you also want to benefit from an earlier work of like a composition that was created many years before yours. So usually it could leave room for, because the business is heavily dependent on giving consent and permission. With copyright, before you use my work, before you commercially exploit it, you should get my consent to distribute, to sell, to stream my work. You must get consent. Now, with sampling, if you are creating something original and you want to use someone else's work that was created before yours, then it would leave room to you having to go out of your way, which can be very difficult at times, to come to agreement on many specifics. Whoever you're sampling will be bothered with, okay, to what degree are you using my work? okay, let me listen to it. Is this something I want to be associated with? Even at that, if it parts all, if it considers it good enough, then it would ask, what is my interest with the publishing? And the new work you're trying to create, how much of that will be mine in terms of publishing? We've seen cases where people, if they are sampling marquee records, marquee compositions, sampling it could cost as much as $30,000, $50,000. The likes of the Beatles, Michael Jackson, and many other greats, even Bob Marley. You could have to part with as much as $30,000. Even our legendary Fela Kuti, if you want to sample some of his old records, you have to pay so much. But again, if you fail to get the permission and the consent, and you single-handedly just go ahead and hoping that they do not acknowledge or they don't find out that they are being sampled, then you leave yourself open to litigation and disputes. And then when the matter is now being resolved, whoever you sampled will then come for everything you've created, which means they could lay claim of the of the sound recording, or they could lay claims to a fraction of the royalties that will be generated in the sound recording. So it's a a lot of people run away from sampling, but people who are in good relationships with music publishers, they understand, they're always taught to do the right thing, get permission at all times before you sample.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question here. I think I'm going to give everybody the chance to take a bite on this question because even our attendees have mentioned the issue of structure in the Nigerian music industry, and everybody have alluded to that in some sense, including Colin. The question is, would you say the challenge of proper structure or an ID structure in any given music industry has affected the recognition of music publishing in Nigeria? We're talking about the Nigerian music industry now, and the challenge of structure and how publishing is glaringly missing in this structure, as it were. So, Colin, from your foray in Africa and Nigerian music industry, what is your perspective on the structure? Perhaps you should give us an ID structure of how the music industry should look like. You have alluded to that in some sense, but in terms of music publishing, what is the challenge here and how can this challenge be surmounted? Then I will come back to Akinyemi, then I will come back to Bez and everybody. You're muted here.
I think the biggest challenge is, education, right? I believe that the writers do not know what their rights are, right? I recently worked on a project out of Nigeria, and when I looked at the hold on, guys, one second, let me sort this thing out. Hold on.
Okay, maybe Bez can quickly chip in.
I'm back, guys. Sorry, I'm back. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
Sorry, guys. So the biggest problem is education. So I recently worked on a project in Nigeria. When I looked at the splits, right, I was blown away because I knew the parties that wrote the song, and I knew the parties that had the ability to make that music. But when you looked at the splits, I saw songwriter shares that were not accurate, right? So what happens a lot of time, because you, as a writer, you've never gotten a publishing check. So you have no idea what it's worth. You've never gotten a check. No one's ever sent you a check in the mail. So you don't have any understanding of what your rights are or what you should be asking for. So when someone comes along in the studio and they say, hey, I'm going to pay you $1,000 US for this beat, and I'm going to take the beat from you completely, most of the writers or producers give up all their rights because they really are just interested in the $1,000, right? Or you say, I think there was a question I just saw where someone asked, well, what if I give a beat to someone or a musical track to someone for free? Do I still retain my publishing rights? You always retain your rights. You don't never give that away. You wrote that. So you should never give that part away. You can give away a musical track. Fine. If the person is a new artist or whatever the case may be, or you think it's so important to have music on this particular artist's album and he doesn't want to pay you and give it away, but you should never give away your rights. And that happens quite a lot. So the first thing I think is educating the industry on what publishing is. And what happens, we don't have any examples, right, where you can see, let's just take, for example, a Davido, or I'm just trying to think of an artist's name, an artist that can say to the industry, hey, guys, I made $2 million or whatever the number is off publishing, so that everyone can now turn and go, oh, wait a minute, what is that? I didn't know about that. Is there money in that thing? But there's no examples. All of the publishings out of the catalogs out of Nigeria either owned out of Europe, primarily out of Europe, or out of French Francophone countries, right? So there's been no valuation. There's no examples. In America, when we learned what publishing really meant as people of color, is when we really started to focus on it, right? So so again, the education part is big. Education to the industry, but education also to the consumers and to the corporates and to government, that this is a huge revenue stream. And as much as you love music and you love dancing to it and you love your favorite artists and you have no problems buying a 5,000 Naira ticket to go see them, respect their rights by making sure that if you're in a hotel that's playing the music, that the hotel is paying a fee. We all enjoy the creative services. We all, as consumers, want to pay for it. We just don't have the right mechanisms or structures. I think to answer the third question you asked, I think it's really building trust in those organizations, that the artists believe that if they join, that they will be compensated. I think there's a lack of trust in the institutions that exist because there's no historical context around those institutions. So trust and education, best global practices. I think I just saw something that said the NCC is now doing a venture with the US copyright law to bring more structure to Nigeria. I think that's going to be incredible. Nigeria is 200 million people with over 400 and how many stations in Nigeria have? Radio stations? I lost count, right? That play music. If those guys all paid, guys, the reason why the music business in America is such a massive business is because you get paid from live. You get paid from publishing. You get paid from performance. There's so many ways that you make your money. Here we make money one way. Either we're performing live or a brand gives us a check for ambassadorship or whatever it might be. Other than that, the other 7 ways that everyone else in the world makes money, we don't make money that way in Africa. And until we can change that conversation, because I don't believe we're 1.2 billion or 3, we have a sustainable economy to support our creative industry. We do not have to consistently look abroad to do it. And I think that we just need to build the institutions and we can flourish. America is only 300 and something million. We are 4 times that.
All right. Thank you, Colin. Along the same line, Akinyemi, I think you can take it from there. But in your taking it, this question arises from your previous explanation about sampling. And it says, if a producer makes and publishes a couple of beats as free, can he have any right to royalties of a final song made and published? So you can tie that together along the same line and bring it together with the challenges of structure in relation to music publishing.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. I think if the producer, according to Nigerian law, the music is the song and the sound recording. Anywhere the sound recording goes, the composition follows. And then by virtue of the law, you have the inherent rights to how the sound recording and the composition is being exploited. So if an artist is trying to work with the copyrights that you've already created, which means if somebody finds your track on YouTube, like a lot of Nigerian producers are creatively marketing themselves like that. They put their tracks, their instrumentals, their beats online on YouTube, on Spotify, and then some other artist or songwriter finds it maybe from across New Zealand, Britain, France, and then they get together with the producer and they ask for the permission of the producer that there's a track, there's an instrumental that I find interesting that I want to work with. And then that opens the door to the conversation on, are you going to be paying me an advance on the instrumental, on the beats? And then am I also going to be getting my 50% publishing? I am always an advocate. Like the last couple of years, the last 5 years, I've been pushing for producers to always retain their copyrights in their compositions, which means do everything you can to ensure that you get publishing interest in all these works that you're creating. So if somebody else is picking up the instrumental from anywhere, you would get into that conversation, make sure you get a publishing where you can get your producer royalties advance, and then make sure you get a royalty share on the sound recording. That means you are looking at 3 possible ways of benefiting, of getting compensation. 1, the producer advance, getting paid. 2, make sure you get your copyright in your composition reserved, which means you're publishing and the new work that will be created, try to go for 50%. And then in the master recording or the sound recording that will be newly produced by the songwriter reaching out to you, make sure you keep your share of the producer royalty points. You could get 10% or 5% royalties off the exploitation of the new song.
Okay, thank you.
So those are ways at which I think you can reserve your interest.
We have so many questions. Prof, this is a question I think you should hold on to this question. I will come back. Prof should think about this question. Then I'll go back to Bez on this. The question revolves around CMO. And it says that from the surface understanding of the Copyright Act, it only allows for 1 CMO in any given class of copyright owners. So the question is, how does this affect the ability of a CMO, of a single CMO, to collect royalties from multiple streams of income, including many musical performances all over the world? So I think while you're thinking about this question, Bess should tell us about what can the artist, the song composer, what can they do? What is their role in this issue of music publishing? As a composer, as a songwriter, you've mentioned education, you've mentioned awareness, but what practical, what concrete steps can you take in making sure this happens in Nigeria?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't really, well, yeah, I mean, we all have a role, even though I don't think it's a role by itself, for the artist. And Colin has really stated it clearly. There's a lack of education in the space, and this lack of education leads to a lot of artists not making sure that they claim their rights from the beginning. Now, for example, Davido can reach out to a young upcoming artist that is making waves, and that young upcoming artist is so excited to work with Davido, and he's not interested in signing anything, And guess what? What them Akiemi have been doing, and a lot of people in the space have been doing, is to make sure that artists, producers, songwriters, that split sheet, make sure that you can sign a split sheet from the point of creation. If you can't split sheet, you can, like, as Fosa would say, you could do a text message to each other to say, oh, okay, so what percentage, just to have a record there that you can go back to, that this was agreed from the beginning. Because if you don't have that on ground, when negotiations start, or when the song is being exploited in the future, you can't have something to back up your claim to the percentage that you own in that song. So it's very important for artists, apart from educating other artists that do not know about it and talk about it more, it's important for them to have that split sheet signed from the beginning, from the point of creation. I think that's a major thing that we can do.
Professor, can I add something to what Bez just said?
Yes,
because the young artists of today are not pen and paper, right? They're their phones. Everything
Exactly.
for them is electronic, right? And I just asked my office to send this, and I'll post it. But there's apps out there that you basically, when you're in the studio, literally as your song is finished, it's a songwriting app where you take your notes, you write your song. It's a split sheet there.
Yeah.
It's physically a split sheet. And everyone, I send it to you. I get your email address. You get it, or your WhatsApp or your text. It works on many formats. And you simply just send it to that person. They just click. I agree. I did 20%. I agree. I did 30%. And that actually becomes a binding document. Because remember, these guys, they don't remember. So you got to first remember you're dealing with the creatives, right? You go back to a creative 2 years later after he wrote something. His memory, based on what he did or what he thinks he did, can be very interesting, particularly if the song is now a hit. Each of those two people will remember the creation process very differently, right? If it wasn't a hit, there's no argument. But if it's a hit, and there's a very famous Nigerian writer that I've gone through this with a bunch of times, his memory of what happened is very different when it's a hit. Right. And I think that is really important because most of these guys have an Android phone or they have something. And it's very easy to say, hey, we just named the song. It's called Today. Let's just get our split sheet. Literally, let me just text this to you. Cool. Click, click, done. It's gone. It sends it directly to the PRO. So if you're a PRO member or you have a manager, whoever you direct it to, that split sheet is now sent off to ASCAP, BMI, or whoever. It's sent to your manager, your lawyer, his manager, his lawyer, whoever it might be. And now that's the end of that. There's no more conversations to have around that song. So I think it's just giving guys the tools and letting them know that the tool exists. And this tool is a free tool. It's a publisher out of Sweden that created it. And he created it because of these kinds of issues, right? These song dispute issues. So I think there is technology that speaks to it. And I think that if we promote that technology across the board, and I believe that the DSPs and everyone else has a vested interest, because a lot of times songs are just in dispute. So no one's getting paid because there's no split sheet. So it's just, and literally that PRO is sitting on all that cash, gaining interest, because in actuality, they don't have any idea who to pay it to. Our admin department spends half of its time going through that disputed list to find materials that are ours material that may be disputed so that we can release funds globally and locally. So I think there is, again, it goes back to education. Because if you empower the creative, they make changes. The creative can change everything.
All right, thank you, Colin. Prof, now, I don't want us to spend a lot of time on CMO question, but what's your view on the issue of the number of CMO in Nigeria against the law and what we have on ground? The question suggests that only one CMO is allowed under the Act, and we have the issue of effectiveness and ability of a CMO to collect royalties across board. What are your views? I know this is a huge debate and it's still raging.
My view is we've gone past the era of one CMO. Obviously, with what is going on, we've gone past that era of one CMO, of what benefits will one CMO be to Afrobeats. The boom, looking at Nigeria's music industry, is really out there. The boom is really, and you have it online, you have it everywhere. Mr. Coyne just said, we're not reaping what we're sowing. There's so much out there. I don't think one CMO is capable of doing enough. I wrote a paper, Prof. will bear me witness, looking at the Adeoke and MCSN Supreme Court case and all that. And I talked about one CMO as against two, one as against two. Any day, anytime, we should have more than one. looking at the industry. It's about the industry and making money from this industry. So one CMO for me personally will not do the work.
Dr. Efoma, do you have something to add to that from that academic point of view and the practical application of that of the law? Just a minute, you have something to add to that? About CMO, the CMO question.
Yes, yes,
sorry.
Prof. Okay. Prof, sir.
Go on.
The Copyright Act provides that only one CMO for a particular act, for a particular artist, for a particular, maybe for musical or artistic or whatever. So
yes.
If we need to have more than one CMO, like I completely agree with Professor Ayoyemi that we should have more than one. That means we need to change the Copyright Act to reflect that. Because right now, what the copyright provides is that until we can show that this particular CMO is not doing the work effectively, then we can try to have another one. So once that has not been proven, then the act must be changed. It's very important, and I'm advocating that the 2010 Copyright Bill should, which has taken care of quite a number of things, should be passed into law. So if we're supposed to have more than one CMO in Nigeria, that should be reflected in the Copyright Act. Because right now, what the Act provides is that we should, as long as the existing CMO is doing well and there is no complaint to that effect and it is not proven, then there will be no need to have another one. So that's my position, Professor. So we need to go back to the Act. We need to change the law to reflect what should be. Because right now, there should be competition. Like, I am also of the view that we should have more than one CMO, because that would keep the other person on his feet and be able to do his work. So once he knows that if he's not paying he's not paying royalties and the artists are not happy with him, they are going over to the next CMO, then he'll be on his feet and he'll do the right thing. But then we should go back to the law and change the provision of the law to reflect that we can actually have more than one, because competition will actually help us in what is going on right now in the industry. Thank you, sir.
May I just add to that as well? May I add to that? It's exactly that clause that makes it possible to have more than one. That clause makes it possible, because look at the structure, look at the environment, look at what is going on. If one is not doing well, then you can think of another. Yes, the law can be updated and things can be done to make it more specific, but that law, that clause, makes it possible to have more than one. So I believe the Act allows you to have more than one because of that clause.
Okay, well, I think I think what the law is actually saying is that the artist has to protect.
Mr. Laude should help us have another webinar on CMO. I think we should take note of that. Now, back to the question for Colin and Akinyemi here. What is the specific role? This question is actually specific to Colin and Akinyemi. They refer to the two questions refer to both of you. What is the specific role of an entertainment lawyer in contrast with a talent manager? And I think that should go to Akinyemi. Why do some managers and non-lawyers try to do the job of entertainment lawyers? And what's the best way to handle it as a lawyer? Now, the second question, I think Colin should take note of this. How do we get those in the international space to respect work coming out of Africa? We've noticed that most international professionals, lawyers, managers, executives, etc., do not respect talent and the expertise of managers, lawyers working from Africa. What's the best way to change that? That's for Colin. Akinyemi.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Interestingly, across with my practice, I work with a lot of talents who already have managers. And as an entertainment lawyer, as a music lawyer, I am already sold to them. They trust me that I'm able to take care of their legal affairs. But what I find a lot in practice is many times, for whatever reason, perhaps they're trying to move very fast, or they don't want to pay for service. many times the manager is always there to act like he can go over these documents without having to make that extra call or seek an opinion. Because even when they have retainers, some of them, even after paying for the retainership for a certain period, still want to move at a lightning speed. And sometimes they call you maybe in the middle of the night, they need you to attend to a situation almost immediately. And when you tell them that there has to be a lot of structure, you know, I have to take my time, go over the documents, have another pair of eyes at the office to go over these documents. Sometimes they just want you to immediately you get a document, give them an opinion, and then when you make it a practice that at least give me 24 to 36 hours or even 48 hours to be able to advise you properly, many creatives don't want to spend that much waiting. So what you find is the talent manager just assumes the role of a lawyer. Then he says, "Oh, I've gone through all the clauses." Then sometimes they now start calling you and asking some questions about certain clauses. Then you already know what's going on. That they don't want you to do your job as a member of the team, as their lawyers, because they want to move fast on a particular transaction, and it affects them at the end of the day. So sometimes the manager just eggs on the talent. Let's go ahead. No need for the lawyer. But the very smart ones who listen, who value the contributions lawyers make, they totally trust lawyers, music lawyers, to be like doctors to their health. We take care, we ensure that the business is properly done, the transactions, the T's are well crossed, the I's are well dotted, and that everything is above board and will stand the test of time. Because without relying on people who already have that expertise and who have gone through the discipline and who have the experience of all these types of transactions in the music business, you are practically just flying blind if you don't rely on the expertise of music lawyers.
Thank you. You know, Collins, you alluded to the missing gap in Africa, the missing revenue stream from publishing, in fact, from the entire value chain of the music industry. So the second leg of this question is, how do we get those in the international space to respect work coming out of Africa? How do we reconcile the two when we in Africa are not even getting enough income from our creativity? How do we get those international space to respect what coming out of Africa? What's your experience like in this area?
You know, and I talk about North America, right? Because I think a lot of my experience is from North America, right? And I'm a manager, so I do move quickly, but I move quickly on a legal agreement that are pretty standard, right? If it's a complicated legal agreement, if it's a producer agreement, there's 5 or 6 things in there I need to look at. I've done 1,000 of them. So as an experienced manager, 25, 30 years, I still pass it by the lawyer, but if it needs to be done now, I make that same, I put myself in that same situation. So I get that, right? From an international perspective, I think that's changing. And to be very honest, I think it's changing because the content that's coming out of the continent is beginning to make global money. And once that begins to change, then the respect or the communication will also change, right? But what you're realizing, and we had the same exact problem in America for many, many years and still have that problem. You have a lot of inexperienced managers. And those managers, it's not a school for management. So it's not like you go to a school and they teach you how to be a music manager. There's no real school. So it's a hustler's game at best, right? So what happens is a lot of the managers that you see on the continent is someone's cousin, best friend, guy that has now positioned himself to be the manager. And they don't have a lot of information. And so a lot of times when you're negotiating with them, either their perception of what something should be or what something is worth is off, right? And so as an international manager, it becomes very frustrating. Because you run into situations where guys say, you know, I should have this, or I should have this, or this is what the way it should be. And a lot of times it's not based on any sense of reality, right? It's not based on any global best practices. I've been here for 20 years. So I go out of my way to teach young managers because I believe an educated consumer is my best client, right? So an educated manager is my best friend in context. One that has no clue is my worst nightmare, right? So when I have a critical situation where I need to put a song in a movie and this guy has no idea, and then I'm trying to explain to him, it doesn't work like that. That was a movie. That's not real life. That's not how it happens. So I go out of my way to do these types of panels or pass on what I was fortunate in my career that two very powerful women in the music business took their time to teach me for free. They never asked me for anything. To this day, they still have never asked me for anything, right? They gave me information because someone before them gave them information for free. So I believe that information should be for free. And I believe that if you're going to be a lawyer, you go to law school, or at least you read some books. If you're going to be a plumber, you go to a plumber or you get an apprentice. Managers believe that they can just look at something on social and become a manager. Yesterday I bought 14 books from my office that talks about the music business from the 30s to today. And I said, every new employee will be required to read each one of these books and pass a test because I don't have the time. You need to study your craft. Everyone here has studied their craft. There's doctors, PhDs. Each person on this call has studied their craft. As a manager, study your craft. It's free online. You don't even have to buy the books. You can go online. It's all free. Learn your craft. Ask questions. Find mentors. So to answer your question about how do we get respect? By being knowledgeable, by knowing what you're talking about, by understanding where you are in the game. If this is your first song, you may not get everything you should get. Sometimes you have to pay school dues to get into the door. And lift as you rise. As you learn, pass that information on for nothing. Because we can't build community unless we do that.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I didn't think that we are going to have this kind of interesting conversation around this topic. I mean, so many issues have arisen in the course of the discussion, especially in the age of webinar fatigue. I can see a lot of people coming in and asking questions. We can't take all the questions. We've been here for about an hour and a half. So we'll be rounding up shortly, but there are one or two questions that I think are germane to this issue. The first is the practical question of setting up a commercial music publishing company. And I'm going again to go back to Akinyemi and Colin, perhaps Colin, to give us an idea of how you can set up a commercial music publishing company. We have already Collecting Society that the two profs have actually taken us up on, and I've challenged our host, Mr. Lowe, to kindly give us the opportunity to explore this area, even though it's very controversial, but we cannot run away from it. Perhaps we'll allow the managers in those societies to join us in that conversation in the future. So, but setting up publishing companies, Akinyemi, what's your idea about this? I think you have one, something like that. Yes. You are muted.
Yes, I just unmuted. Thank you, Prof. Yes, I don't like to announce that I'm also a music publisher. I don't want to distract my associates. I want them to know me as a music lawyer than as a music publisher.
Yes,
but
yes.
I'm in a relationship with I'm in a relationship with a partner, and together we own a music publishing company. But I'm not the face for that. And so, like anything else, you need the right kind of information. You need the right kind of people. You need to teach you, because the seed for music publishing was sown when I attended the conference at Vision Center like 8 years ago. And ever since, I've been working towards being a lawyer and also having some interest in a music publishing company. I am not the face for the music publishing company. So what you need to do is have the knowledge of self. I want to be a music publisher. These are the examples of music publishers that I admire. And then these are music publishing companies that are playing big on the global scale. Then these are also independent music publishing companies. So like anything else, if you want to set up a company in Nigeria, you have to also set up an entity in Nigeria, go through the process of registering your company, and then more importantly, begin to be a member of the community of songwriters. Be a member of the community of songwriters, understand everything you need to know about the business. Like Mr. Collins said, you have to understand the value chain from the songwriter to how music is being pitched, how people invest in songwriters. You have to understand everything. It took me like 5-6 years to be able to confidently say that I understand what music publishing is. So it will take a lot. To set it up, it's a journey that you would never learn everything, but as you move along with the right kind of guidance, if we are fortunate to have a relationship with an experienced music publisher like Mr. Collin, I already have relationships with other music publishing companies, with other music publishers, and I'm always learning. There are materials online for free, can get that. But more importantly, as you build, then you will start having more problems. You know, the problems of accounting. How do you set up your accounts? How do you report to your clients? Due diligence. Is this the kind of client you want to invest in? Is this the kind of songwriter you want to invest in? You would also have more issues with setting up the right kind of strategic partnerships, publisher to publisher relationships, collaboration agreements, many things. It's a business with a lot of moving parts, and you would really struggle most of the time to, stay abreast of what's going on. But like I said, I'm even still learning. I'm not even there yet. So for now, I'm still happy to just be addressed as a music lawyer. Maybe sometime in the future, I'm giving myself many years. It's a lot of, and I advise that lawyers come into the space as well, because with the foundation of our practice, with the knowledge we gained from going to law school and the university, it helps us thrive easily because we understand the business of rights, of copyrights, of commercial transactions, of contracts. And I think we are best suited to be music publishers, even talent managers.
Collin, for the benefit, yes, for the benefit of the artists, composers in our panel, and also as our attendees, give us a peep into the metrics of determining the share of revenue that should accrue to songwriters and composers, of course, by extension, publishers. How do you account for this share? I mean, in the introduction, we gave a background into the entire revenue, the estimated value of the music.
So
how do you calculate the metrics? What are the metrics that you use in determining the share to composers and songwriters? And also, hold on, by extension, you can take this together. The transparency that the digital distribution channels afford in calculating the share of publishing, how does that facilitate accounting for revenues from digital sales as well? You can take all of that together because of time.
So I'm gonna add on to what Yemi just said. I'm gonna add on to what he said. The reason why I'm a publisher is it's really stemmed from, look, a good publisher is someone that knows its works, and not only knows its works, but is consistently pushing his catalog. You have a lot of publishers that are publishers because it sounds like a good idea. I should own something, so let me become a publisher. And then they do a lot of, if there's a deal that comes across the desk, then they'll do it, but they're not aggressive, right? The best publishers that I've grown up around are the guys that we only, in my publishing company, I think we have 14, maybe 15 writers at best, I think, if I remember correctly. I know pretty much every song in their catalog. I am consistently pitching them to artists, for commercials. I'm pitching them to movies, TV shows, whatever it might be. That is my definition of what a publisher is. To answer your second part of your question about the admin, I'm not a great admin person. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not, that's not my specialty. I'm a creative. I'm a storyteller. We did a partnership with a company out of Europe, a guy that I've partnered on many different things, who's the #1 independent publisher in Europe. And they do all of our back-end admin, right? So they make sure that every penny that is out there is being collected. And they're a small boutique independent, right? So I try to answer the question as much as I can in the context that it's very transparent on the DSPs. The laws are there, what they pay. So it's a very simple equation that you can figure out, and you know what your revenue is for your share. You can go on Apple for artists, you see how many downloads or how many streams you had, and there's a very simple math equation that applies to that, right? Because when I became a publisher this time in my life, I knew that collections will be the difference between us and the next guy. We got the best in the world to help us with that particular part. And that really worked well for us. I'm a creative publisher in the context that I only sign guys that I think, we only sign writers that we believe are exportable. That's our model. It doesn't have to be anybody else's model. It's our model. Our model is to take Africa to the world and the world to Africa. So we look at writers that we believe that their skill set is marketable for an Adele or a Jay-Z or whoever, Beyonce or whatever else, as much as it may be marketable for a Fireboy, right? So for me, I look at my writers that I can put them in a room and they can score a commercial, or they can make a rap song, or they can go do a reggae song. So what drives us is the creative for our publishing entity. That's really, we sign guys that I believe that we can sell. We sign guys that we believe, most of our writers are not producers, right? And I think we have 3 or 2 just lyric guys that just really much write lyric and melody. So that's my definition from a publisher's perspective. From a collection perspective and understanding your revenue flow, there's quite a bit of information out there, but it's pretty straightforward. It's not like it used to be, right? You can get a radio report and see how many times your record was played for the course of that year. And then you can look at the reports from the PRO and you can kind of match those things to see where you should be and what revenue you should make, right? It's a tedious process. I don't know one creative that wants to do that. No creative wants to sit down because this is an accounting nightmare, right? And I definitely don't want to do that myself. Like that's not my gift, right? I'm very clear about what my gifts are, right? So I don't know if I answered the question completely. I think it's setting up a publishing company is pretty easy, right? You set up with your local PRO. We're set up with pretty much every PRS in the world, right? So our entity, we have a Japanese partner, we have a US partner, we have a UK partner, a Germany partner, you name it. We have a partner with every organization around the world, right? We are registered locally in South Africa with SAMRO, but we're registered with ASCAP. And so we're registered with every entity to make sure that we don't see any money fall through the cracks. That's what our partner, that's what his role is. He couldn't tell you one song in our catalog if it bit him. He wouldn't know, but that's not his role. His role is to collect and find my money. That's his job. My job is to find the best writers that's going to make us money. So that's our position is a little bit unique. But the guy that runs our publishing division was the second in charge of Universal Publishing for all of Africa. He's extremely knowledgeable in this space. So when it comes to admin, that's his thing. My thing is more on the creative side.
Okay, thank you. Now, sadly, we're going to the last round of questions for everybody. And this question is packed. It's 3-in-1 question because of time. And I would like everybody to adhere strictly to the time. We've been here for almost going to 2 hours now. So I will just give everybody, shall I say, 3 minutes each to round up with this 3-in-1 question. The first part of the question is, what are the important steps to take in developing or recognizing music publishing in Nigeria? What are the next steps? We have all explored this topic. We have alluded to different challenges that we cannot begin to, to summarize now. So what are the important next steps? Secondly, we also talked about royalties, publishing royalties. It's missing somewhere, hanging somewhere. We haven't accounted for it. Our composers and music and songwriters have not earned publishing royalties in Nigeria. So can these royalties be recovered? And if so, where and how? So that's the second part of the triple barrel question. And the third part of this question, I would like everybody to take note of this, is what is the future of songwriters and composers from the perspective of music publishing? Because we know that's all, they are all about music publishing, composers and songwriters. So what's the future for them in Nigeria? So I will start from, again, let me start from make a reverse arrangement. Bez will have to start with us on this three-part question. As your closing remarks, really. So take your time for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
To this question.
Okay. Thank you. So recently, I started something, co-founded some venture with CC Hub. CC Hub is a tech hub which specializes in, creating, different innovations, tech innovations for solutions that for challenges that we have in Africa. And I think that is the way to go. What kind of solutions can we find, for the challenges that we have in Africa? And part of what we're doing is creating an innovation challenge, putting our challenges out for young people who are in tech field and interested in music tech to submit ideas, submit solutions for these kinds of challenges. And for the next step, I see that as the way to go, which we're already doing. There's so much being left on the table. There's so much for artists and songwriters that they need to be getting that they're not. And again, there's a future that is looking bleak if we don't have all these solutions for the challenges. So where we're coming up with an innovation challenge, of course, there's a lot of work for the PRO, which is COSON, to do, because as a publishing company, you need to be also connected to your PRO in the space they're in, to be able to collect what they're also collecting for your artists that you signed. So there's a lot of work that COSON needs to do. And I think technology should be what will solve all these challenges, because technology can make all your earnings transparent, as we can see from all DSPs all over the world that can go to the back end and see what's going on. My Apple Music for Artists, I can see what's going on, and that's technology helping me to see all these figures and details. So having solutions for those challenges using technology, basically.
All right, next I will go to Dr. Ifoma to give us your closing comments on those questions. Hello, are you there?
Yes, I just unmuted myself. So my response to the triple barrel question is that we should actually start to educate our artists. They need to be educated. They need to know their rights. It's very important. It has been severally said that some of them just want to blow, and they're not patient enough. They don't want to wait. They don't want to do the right thing and take the right steps. So the first thing is that they should actually get a lawyer, not a manager. They should get a lawyer who would actually put them in the right path and properly educate them to be able to enforce their rights when the need arises. So that's one, that's education. And then we should also have a forward-looking legislations that will protect the artists. Our Copyright Act, as it is now, is not very friendly with them. Looking at the technology that we have presently. So there's need for us to have a forward-looking legislation. There's need for us to have a copyright act that is in the new era, that is actually, in the digital age. It's important to do that. Then there is also need for us to have a harmonization of the international laws, all the ones that Nigerians are signatories to, and then the ones they have ratified. So there is need for us to have a harmonization of those international laws. And then there is need for greater enforcement by the Nigerian Copyright Commission. It's only the Nigerian Copyright Commission that is empowered to take care of the artists in Nigeria. They need to come to their aid. The Copyright Act provides that they should educate the masses. A lot of people don't even know. So many people, there should be education from the grassroots. People should understand what copyright is and also help to protect the rights of these artists. People just go online and download music. They don't know what copyright is. They don't know, they don't have an idea. So there's need for the Nigerian Copyright Commission to be on their toes to educate the masses. There's need for them to also be up and doing to protect the interest of the artists. So that's my closing remark. And then I'm also saying that the players in the music industry should come together to transform the industry.
Thank you. Akiyemi, next steps. Can royalties be recovered? What's the future of composers and songwriters from the point of view of music publishing?
Yes, with respect to the recovery of royalties, it is sad that I'll tie the two questions together: the recovery of royalties and the future of songwriters and composers. It is sad that a lot of the clients that I have, many of them are already collecting royalties from their compositions. But it is sad that we are not even looking in the way of the Nigerian or the African market per se. The South African markets, music markets, they do a good job of helping to collect royalties from the public or commercial exploitation of music within the territory. But in other African countries, we're still far, far behind, like Mr. Collins said earlier. So what you find is most of my clients will look elsewhere for all these royalties to come in. That makes sense. And it's been working for them. But the consequence of that is that the apathy to what is going on in Nigeria will continue to grow. Because when you have all our A-list and B-list artists, songwriters, and performing artists signing up to collective societies outside of Africa, then the ones coming after them, the new generation, would also follow in their step and then put their catalog, they ship it away to other territories outside of Africa. That means we are losing money on the administration fee that could have been, coming to Nigerian collecting societies. We're losing money at that. And then all these catalogs that we are shipping elsewhere, most of the time when it is time to pay those royalties back, number one, the administration fee is collected. Number two, there is taxation. Some can be as far as 30% on anything you are collecting on those foreign territories. Mr. Collins already alluded to that. So we are losing money. A lot of our songwriters are paying heavily in taxes. If you collect $1,000, you leave $300 to the US, or you leave like 25. If you're collecting 1,000, you leave like $300 to the US. You leave like 250 to many other countries in Europe. And if the Nigerian collecting societies were set up properly, we would not be paying taxes to other collecting societies collecting on our behalf. Also, the admin fee. So I'm thinking all those, the bulk of those monies, we have thousands of songwriters, it will amount to something. Then the government government of the day will be able to say, oh, this is how much that was contributed in taxes to the Nigerian purse from the activities of our songwriters and composers. So that is just my fear that in the future, if we don't, reverse the situation now, as we go into 5-10 years from now, everybody else is still going to be signing up to ASCA, BMI, and PRS. And no one is staying back with COSON to put their catalog with COSON and then get all the monies funneled back into Nigeria with COSON.
Thank you. Colin,
Yes.
your final thoughts. What are the important next steps? Can the royalties be recovered? What's the future?
It's unlikely. I think it's probably unlikely to be recovered. I'm not sure who you will recover it from, right? That would be my first question. What we're doing, what we need to do in Africa is not brand new. I agree with Bez around technology. Technology is the answer going forward. I believe that we're not creating something new. These mechanisms and these things exist. I think we consistently try to come up with a new thing, and I always say, guys, this exists already. We're not created. We all know how to cook food. It's already. We just need to take best global practices and localize them, right? And that's what we need to do. We don't need to overthink it. We need to take into consideration where we are as a society and as a country. But there's best practices that are already in place. There's things that have already been written, that are done, that are in place, that we can localize towards what's going on in Nigeria or Kenya or South Africa. We don't have to spend months and years trying to figure it out, because it's been figured out. It's been figured out all over the world. So I think that's the first step, is to really just look at best global practices. I think collaboration, like we're doing on this call, is critical, right? There is an affinity in North America. I'm from Jamaica. But I'm from Jamaica, but grew up in the US and the UK. There's always been a huge desire for people of color to connect with people of color, right? The head of Sony Music, who owns the biggest catalog in the world, is a black man. And if I picked up the phone and I call Big John, I say, Big John, there's a bunch of guys in Nigeria trying to figure this out. Can you put the best people with the best interests together with them to help them figure it out and get to the finish line quicker? Because what I find is that guys are consistently, we're going into a phase, guys, that is really, really dangerous. And the phase that we're going in is that everyone is extracted from Africa again. This time they're extracting the creative. They've taken the oil, they're taking everything else. Now it's the creative. And they're going to take that again. We're extracting, we're not building. So I think it's really, really important that we collaborate, right? Nigeria has some of the strongest laws around what is Nigerian and making sure that there's always a Nigerian in the room protecting Nigerian interests, right? I've had several businesses in Nigeria, and that's something I really appreciate. We need to collaborate and come up with best solutions and apply them quickly. They should not take years to be done. As far as the future, for me, again, I agree. I'll just conclude to say I agree with Bez. It is about technology, and it's about collaboration. It's all. I'm from Jamaica. To this day, as big as Jamaica is in music, I don't think any Jamaican artist collects $1 from any local PRO. We got it completely wrong. But then again, we're only 2.6 million people. So there wasn't a lot of money to be collected to begin with, right? But we got it wrong. We got it completely wrong in Jamaica. And all of our rights sit outside of our little island. I think we have an opportunity. Nigeria has the hugest opportunity. It's leading. It's a leader in the creative space. I've never met more creative people than I've met since I've been on the continent. And my last closing thing, if the businessmen of Nigeria, the ones that have made billions in oil, billions in banking, billions in tech, if you're able to show them that this is a massive revenue stream, how you change minds, how you think of yourself in a global context is coming from this creative space. The reason why the world is paying attention and all the attention we're getting right now is because of the creative. It isn't the oil, it isn't the tech, it's the creative. It's why everyone is looking. Everyone is looking at Africa right now because of what the creatives are doing. But business guys, serious business guys that can make change, look at it as, just a nice singer. That's not really a business. The music business is $100 billion business. It's a business. We're just not, the guys that have the power don't look at it that way. And we need them to change their minds. We need government to start to look at it from a tax revenue perspective. And if they can see it, then because they fixed all the laws for everything else, for the telcos, for the DSTs, for the oil, for the banking, for everything else. They changed the laws so that government and the country benefited. We just need to catch up with this particular sector, which I believe, in my opinion, changing the perception of Africa can only be done by the creative. No one else will change the perception of Africa except for the creative. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Prof, can you run up with your closing comments on those issues?
Yes, next step, I think Colin has said it all. He's really said so much regarding the Nigerian terrain and all that. So the next step, I believe education is key, but I'll use the word awareness so that Nigerians will not run away. They think you want them to go to school. Awareness, training programs and all that. Then we should all come together and have a training program, do something for these people, especially the young ones that you don't know about, that they're out there. So many times I finish class, some students will follow me and say, "Ma, I sing, I write, I do that. So what are you doing about it?" And we're too little for anyone to recognize us. And I said, no, just get the right people to see what you've got and all that. So I'll be appealing to everyone. The next step for me is awareness, and we do need a structure. And then I don't know if I can appeal to everyone to write something. And we can start with that as well. The next step is we just don't all go home and forget about this. We can actually have a handbook or something, a book on the music industry in Nigeria, looking at music. All of us with 7 here now, TL, Prof, everyone, Bez, Dr. Shimulori, Colin, we can write something. Foza is interested, Aurelia, everyone. We have 10 chapters, and that would be good for us in the music industry and Nigeria copyright industry. So I think we need to do this. So I'll hunt you down. I'll come after you for some, just 10 pages, 15 pages, and I'll be fine. So to the young people, and then we always forget about the advertising industry. I think they're the next. After Nollywood, Afrobeats, they have content as well. They do a lot of content creations. People overlook them. I don't know who wrote that. Somebody wrote that. Teniola sang it. Then you have it on TV, ringtones, it's there, it's online, it's everywhere. Who wrote that? I don't know. Someone must have written it, and a whole lot of money is going away like that. And then Nigeria as a nation can make a whole lot of money from this. This is the revenue generating sector, which we really need to look into and close that gap. It's about time we close that gap in the publishing industry. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Prof. There's one thing that is clear in all of our conversation this afternoon. We have said the music publishing has strong legal foundation. We have agreed on that. We have also agreed on the challenges of structure, system in the music industry as a whole. And we have all also agreed that best practices are needed, either in terms of technology and in terms of collaboration. And there is now, with this webinar, a clarion call for music publishing in Nigeria. And I think that's very clear if we have to issue a communique. That's in one paragraph, that's what we have agreed in with this panel. I really want to, I want to say thank you, but I'm not allowed to thank you. Unfortunately, as I always say, I'm not allowed to thank you at all. The host is my boss. He's the one to do the thank you and the vote of thanks. So I will just keep my mouth shut at this stage and say that my job is done. Thank you. Not for thank you, but for this conversation. Mr. Lawi, over to you for the vote of thanks.
Prof, thank you again. Amazing, fantastic moderation of this webinar. Let me start by thanking our guests. I'll say that our guests because three of us on this, on the screen, you can see are all LNA partners. That's Yemi and Prof. So I'll start by thanking Colin. I met Colin a long time ago with through Obi, Aseka, Bounce Back Media and stuff with your partner. So I know Colin has been around for a while, and all of you have seen what Colin knows. Is full of knowledge in the industry. I'm really, really grateful you could come on, and I guess there's so much we've said that definitely we got to talk again, and we're going to have to collaborate, as you rightly said. Akinyemi, thank you. We had a chat yesterday, and Akinyemi reminded me how we met about 8 years ago. I actually didn't remember, but because he has done so much since that time that I forgot that we met in my office 8 years ago. But I was following him after then, thinking that is how I knew about him. I didn't actually remember till he told me the story. And thank you for the kind words yesterday. Bez as well, really, really grateful you could come. Bez doesn't really know where we started, where we knew each other from, but I'll remind him when we speak. I mean, I was kind of a groupie to Bez's music when he came out, you know, so I followed his career. Yes, I did. I used to go to all your shows. I was there. I was always there because you came with a fresh flavor. Wow. And you've maintained your standard. I mean, it's been the same. You haven't really deviated from what you believe is your type of music. And I know the knowledge because I've had conversations with you and some of your partners, you know, so you had a very strong team behind you, and people were asking, what do we do? Follow Bez. You know, Bez has always had a manager that is knowledgeable. He's got a lawyer. I know he deals with FOSA, and, you know, he's had the structure. You need to have that structure behind you to thrive. You know, you need to talk to us lawyers. And the real Efiko, Doctor, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. As I was telling her at the beginning, I saw her on what was it again? The digital sports webinar yesterday, and I mean, your knowledge is amazing. Thank you so much. Well, what else can I say? Prof, thank you. Yemi, this is you guys' platform. You know it is. These are the ethicals of LNA, as they say. So guys, we're going to continue this. This is something we wanted to do. We've been saying we're going to do it, and Colin had said something, pass on the knowledge. And that is what this is really about, passing on the knowledge. We've been doing this for a while, and we thought we should do this. We've been saying it for a while, so thank you for the webinars that have now become, it's easier for us to meet. Colin is away in South Africa, and he's here. The first one we did, we had 2 people dialing from America, so we're going to continue on that note. We have touched on, the first one was generally entertainment. We've broken it down now. We've touched on publishing. From what we can see, there's so much more to talk about. We can't squeeze everything in. This was supposed to be an hour, max an hour, 30 minutes. We've gone on for almost 2 hours. One thing that has come out of this that everyone was hitting on is collective administration. I mean, I have been in practice for over 20-something years, close to 30, and what brought me into entertainment law, if Prof remembers, was collective administration. That was 20-something odd years, 20 plus years ago. And we're still discussing this collective administration. It's still a problem. I mean, we've been involved in it. We've had meetings. We've done all sorts. Even recently, I mean, people were talking on radio stations. We negotiated with Bon and Ivan on royalty payments. So the radio stations are ready to play ball. They're not. They're there. Just get the collective societies to get their act right. Radio stations are not running away from it. They're ready to play. We sat down, we agreed. Yemi, you were at the first meeting. We agreed on a tariff, and the tariff was okay for the collective. Yeah, but the whole thing is a mess. So everybody will fall in line if we can get the structures in place and we can get the collecting societies working properly. The question which was brought up here, Doctor feels the law does not provide for. Prof feels the law has said you can get more than one. I love that topic. We've had this discussion in the past, and I think it's a discussion we have to have. So unfortunately, it won't be the next one because there's a very, very interesting topic that has been going around again, which we want to touch on. which is broadcast. That brings the radio stations and all the broadcasts in. We have a new broadcast code. There's some issues around the issue of rights, copyrights, and the IP rights there. So I think hopefully that is going to be something we'll touch on next. But I promise that after that we'll come back to collective administration, which is very, very important. Anyway, I'm getting signals from my back-end staff that I'm over talking. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, all the participants that came on. Thank you. I mean, I see a lot of people that were on the last one. I'm really, really, really grateful you came on. We're going to continue doing this. We're going to keep giving back. We're going to try our best to do as many more. And we might even do some training, as Prof said. So thank you very much, everyone. And, we'll see you hopefully within a month. We'll try and pull off one. If the profs will have my time, I'll try and do one again in a month's time. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.